New York & Company is the best kept secret for great fashion at amazing prices. The new holiday collection has arrived, and this weekend is the Friends and Family sale. Every single thing 50% off. From holiday party outfits that sparkle to hundreds of spectacular gifts starting at $5. They have something for everyone, including new arrivals from their exclusive celebrity brands from Eva Mendes and Gabrielle Union. Hurry and check out the best deals of the year from New York & Company.
And now your host of California MUFON Radio, Lorien Fenton.
Welcome, everyone, to the California MUFON Radio Show. I'm your host, Lorien Fenton. I'm so happy you guys are with me here tonight. I've been missing for a couple of weeks, and I just, oh my God, I don't know where to start. I just want to thank Inception Radio Network for being there for me all the time. I travel a lot, and the poor guys are like, is she traveling this week? Is she home? We can't tell from these cryptic messages she sends us. So the poor guys, you know. So last week, I'm really sorry we weren't here, but MJ took off for his holiday, and I was actually home because it was 11/22, and it's the first year in a long time I wasn't in Dallas for the memorial service. I decided to come home the day after, since this is the first year I hadn't produced it in about 3 or 4 years. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to come home. I don't need to stay there. I'm not producing it. I don't have to work. And it was great. I got home really late Monday night. I slept all day Tuesday. I was sick as a dog. And then Wednesday I went to work, and then, you know, it all started in again. It's just, oh my God. So I was really looking forward to the 11/22 special. We had James Fetzer, but I'll tell you what, folks, Jim and Larry Rivera were actually going to show up. You know what? Larry actually was on 3 other shows that night. And I think what was going to happen is he sent me all of his files, and I was going to play them for you guys, and I was going to show you what he's discovered now. As you guys all know, Larry Rivera is the guy that discovered that Lee was, now he didn't discover Lee was in the doorway. I mean, Jim Garrison knew that Lee was in the doorway. He's the first person to have taken Blender and these other programs and layered over his face with his pictures and his portraits, and proven with, you know, FBI facial recognition software that it was actually Lee in the doorway. So we know that it's Lee, and I don't know if you guys can hear it, but one of my cats is just croaking like a frog out here. I don't know what's wrong with her, but well, that's another whole story. I'm going to go into that in a minute, but what's going on with the cats? Everybody asks me, you know, it's funny, I'm a radio talk show host, and all people ask me when they see me and meet me is, how are your cats? And I'm like, oh, they're fine, you know, but it's so funny. That's the first thing that comes up usually. So, and then the second thing is, how do you know so much about UFOs and aliens? I'm like, I don't know. I think they just instilled the connection straight to them, and that's why I get all the info. Anyhow, going back to Larry Rivera and the conference, oh my God, the conference was really wonderful this year. It was kind of the same speakers as last year, so, you know, we had a little bit of new information, and that was good. But Larry knocked it out of the park this year, because last year he proved that Lee was in the doorway. Lee Harvey Oswald standing in the doorway watching the limousine go by. So it's pretty hard to shoot somebody when you're down on the first floor in the doorway getting your picture taken, as I tell everybody that even questions whether Lee was up in there. Oh my God, on that 6th floor. Oh God, you guys, I got to go off on a tangent. This is one of my rants. I got to do this. What the heck is the city of Dallas still holding on to that stupid 6th floor museum, having all those boxes set up with the plexiglass so you can't go in there and disturb it, just like it was in 1963? And our big joke, as all the JFK researchers say, yeah, go on up to the 6th floor museum, get your little tour, pay your $25 or whatever it is to stand there and look at a room that doesn't have Lee Harvey Oswald in it, just like it didn't at 11 or 12:30 on 11/22/1963. It's a total reenactment. I don't know if they understand what they're doing, but he's not standing there now, and he wasn't standing there then. So, and they say this is exactly how the room was when he shot them, you know. And we all laugh. I mean, it's like it's the biggest joke in the community beyond. I think anything else that goes on with us is that darn 6th floor museum has to sit up there and can perpetuate a lie as the way they do. And, God, it just makes me so angry. Anyhow, I have plans for them. They don't know it, but when Lorien gets pissed about something and she sees a way around them, and, so I'm telling you, folks, I got something planned, and it's not going to make them very happy at all. But that's okay. That's a thing for another day, another time. If I ever make enough money off of what I'm doing right now, that's definitely on my hit list. I think that's number 1 on the hit list of things I want to do once I make some real money, and that is go after the 6th floor museum with all my heart. Actually, it's number 2. Number 1 is get Lee Harvey Oswald exonerated in the congressional record, because, I mean, here's a guy, the poor guy, wasn't even up there shooting. Now, he was complicit because he knew what was going on, but what he was trying to do, and I have to reiterate this every time I say he was complicit, because, you know, how do you one man fight against the mass amount of people that were up in those nests? You guys, there were like 7 nests with 4 people in it, 7 times 4, 28 people shooting that we know of. There probably were more. Our guesses are probably more like 35. So, you know, how do you go up against 35 people, the mob, the CIA, the FBI, LBJ, the Cubans? I mean, everybody was involved, and he was sitting there trying to figure out a way to save JFK's life. I mean, that's what he was doing. He was actually up on the 6th floor about 12 noon, and he had a gun, and Loy Factor was up there, Mac Wallace was up there, and Rita Lorenz, I think is her name. She was on the walkie-talkie, and they were all spotting each other, and they were, you know, I mean, he had the gun in his hand, but he set it down and walked away and said, I'm not doing this. So, you know, there's a real hero for you. I mean, he tried to think of anything he could up until that moment to stop it, and he couldn't stop it, so he just did not participate. And I think that is so brave. I mean, they could have shot him right there on the spot and killed him for not participating. So, you know, I don't know. The whole thing stinks, and there's just way too many people that have come out of the woodwork in the last 50 years that have told the truth of what really happened. And Lee Harvey Oswald was not up on the 6th floor. So exonerating him is number 1. Number 2 is getting rid of that darn museum, unless they want to put the right people up there. Mannequins of the right people would be really fine with me. And then a whole explanation of what really went down that day. That would be fine with me. But, you know, perpetuating this lie is making me nuts. Absolutely freaking nuts. And, you know, that's half the reason I left Dallas early, too, is because I don't think I could take another 11/22 standing on that hill when I can't get this to happen. You know, I feel so bad for Judith Ferry Baker. I mean, this poor woman, she spends her whole life doing nothing but trying to exonerate Lee. That's all she does. And she can't live in this country anymore. They've tried to kill her a million times. I mean, what kind of hell is that? You know, all this over perpetuating a lie. You know, oh, God. Okay, well, okay, enough of Dallas. Dallas was fabulous, though. The conference was fabulous. Everything was great. I got to sit with Chris Milligan and try and date books. And Jim Fetzer was there. Larry Rivera was there. Everybody was there. And what I was trying to tell you guys at the beginning of the show is that last week, if we had had the show, Larry would have proven to you 2 new things that he's discovered. He's discovered that the body of JFK that they used at Bethesda, Maryland at the hospital to do the autopsy with was not JFK. He has proven it now. He's used his, his FBI facial recognition software and all that stuff to get all the photos he could of everybody that was on a slab at that time, because we're not sure how many people were actually involved in this as the body doubles. And so what they're doing is they're actually doing the facial recognition on them as well. And they're starting to really believe that J.D. Tippett actually was on that slab at Bethesda. And so very interesting stuff going on. I mean, everybody thinks, oh, my God, it's 54 years later. How come you guys are still messing with this? I get this everywhere I go. Why do you even bother with JFK? There's so many other things going on. I go, because if we could solve that, if we can get him exonerated, if we can get all this to get back to the way it was before that those triggers got pulled in 1963, folks, it would show people right now what this country could be if we get rid of all the falsehoods, the lies, the myths, everything that they've created around that whole assassination. It would open up people's eyes to the point where they go, well, shoot, they lied about that then. If the Warren Commission was a total lie like it was, if everything was the way it was back then and they got away with it, what are they doing to us now? That's the bottom line, folks. That's why I keep harping on this. I think it's so important. It is just so important to me. It should be important to every man, woman, and child in the United States, seriously, that we fix this. And then once we fix that, then everything else can fall in place like dominoes. That's really the bottom line here. Okay, I'm done with JFK for a while. At least until I can get James and Larry back on the show. So we'll get them here, folks, I promise. And I'm sorry about last week, but MJ was gone. I was panicked. Everybody was running around in circles, and it was just one of those days. And it actually was kind of fun in the end, because I got to talk to Larry and Jim for about an hour during when we would have been live on air. So we had a good time. Wish you guys could have been there. I probably should have just said, hey, what if I could plug into IRN and just do this conversation? That would have been great. You guys would have gotten an ear full. It would have been really interesting. Anyhow, the other things that are going on with me and right now are the fact that I don't know if you guys heard me on Dave Scott's Spaced Out Radio last week. I think it was last week. I'm not sure. Yeah, it was. It was I think it was on Thanksgiving night or the night after Thanksgiving. I can't remember, but you should listen to that show. Grant Cameron was on for the first 2 hours, and then I came on in the last hour, and Grant and I started talking about some of the major research that he's been doing on the people that run the narratives within the UFO community. Now, this is very important, too, folks, because, you know me, I just don't get involved with just, oh, yeah, there's an alien and he said hi to me and I have babies in space. I'm not doing all that right now. What I'm trying to get down to is who in the heck is running the show. I want to know who the humans are that are interfacing with the aliens that are running our narrative and telling us we're supposed to believe in the UFO community. This is where I'm at now. I'm getting mad on all fronts. I'm going, it's time to expose all the cabals at every angle and every space that we can. So, you know, that's pretty much it, you guys. I guess I'm just getting old and cantankerous, and I finally decided I'm not going to bother with the contact. And the contact's great, and I love it. And I want to talk about it with our guest tonight, who's going to be an extraordinary interview, I can tell here in a few minutes. But I'm telling you, folks, it's just, you know, it's how the contact is happening. That's changing a lot. We're going to talk about that a bit tonight, but I want to know who the people are behind all the curtains that have been pulling our strings since 1947. I'm not kidding you. It's the same dudes. They started the working group in the 60s, and the next thing you know, it's the same people showing up at Tom DeLonge's table. And that's when I realized I have been being duped all this time. And I hope you guys saw that too. I hope this whole Tom DeLonge thing was a big eye-opener for me. I mean, I've been on the right track all this time, and I knew who the players were, and I had a feeling they were behind a lot of stuff, and I knew what was going on, the Bigelow crowd, the John Alexander crowd, the Avery, the working group. You know, I know that these guys are all back there pulling strings like little puppet masters. And I know the dark side of them too. And someday I'll have some people on telling you guys about what they know about these guys. But anyhow, that's another story for another day. But really, folks, we want to sit around. Now, I jumped ahead. The whole Tom DeLonge thing, if you look at who's on his staff, who's his board, who's telling him what to do, this whole 9 yards is basically he's the next guru puppet master they pulled out of their pocket, and he is the next little... Bassett's dead. I'm sorry, not Bassett, but Greer's dead. Bassett's dead, too, as far as they're concerned. Corey Good didn't work out because he is a mind control victim and a contactee, and he couldn't keep on script. Tom DeLonge is deluded. He's deluded himself into thinking that he's that important that they came after him to be the next savior of the UFO community. Sorry, folks, it isn't that way. These guys run everything from how this guy thinks, and he is so... You know what blows my mind? You got to have the ego, because if you don't have that ego, you can't be duped by these people. I mean, Greer was duped by him for years and years. I mean, it's all because of their ego. They think they're that important. They think that these guys are coming to them because they're all that important. They're coming to them because they can use them and manipulate them. It's nothing to do with being important. Oh, God. Okay, see, now I'm starting to get angry again. Oh, all right. I'm going to calm down, and I'm going to talk about contact a little bit. I just want to say one thing. There have been reports from some contactees that a lot of these guys in the working group and the people that are controlling the narrative about who's the best speaker right now and why are these, here, okay, I am going to go down this path. I wasn't going to do it tonight, but I'm going to do it. I'm sitting here struggling to put on my conference. I have about 12 to 13 extraordinary speakers I want to bring to this conference this year, and they are not well known. And because they're not well known, and because they aren't being egomaniacked into the narrative as all these guys want, like many of the people out there that are in the UFO community that have written a book and they're like, oh, the saviors right now, they're at the big conferences, they're all speaking, and everybody's got to go see them. I still can't figure that one out. Why anybody pays to see 90% of these people, I don't even understand. And why they don't pay the small amount I charge for my conferences to see people that are actually got their heads out of their and actually know what they're talking about and have been through hell with the aliens or the working group or just life in general and can give you guys some real crazy, amazing advice. I mean, I don't get it, but I'm still trying to figure that one out for myself. It's my issue to deal with. People say I should just sell out and bring in Stanton Friedman, or something like that. I'm like, oh my God, my integrity is at stake here, folks. I can't do that. I've got to bring you people that no one knows about or never seen before, or have the answers to what's really going on out there. I mean, I can't do this. It's just, it's not part of my makeup. But anyhow, okay. So, I'm just basically trying to tell you that these guys that are in the working group, the aviary, the guys that are pulling the strings, they go to these conferences. They go to these big conferences. And many a time while they're at these big conferences and people are yakking at them, contactees are seeing them from across the room and they are flipping out because these people are the perpetrators of many of their MyLabs experiences. So I just want to let you guys know that. Okay, and that's the only thing I'm going to say. I'm not going to say any more. I'm not going to say who, what, where, and how, but I'm saying I know that for a fact, and I hope the person that knows that told me is not mad at me for telling you guys. But I think you have the right to know that these guys are not playing, on our side. These guys are playing both sides of the equation, and they don't give a rat's patootie about the contactees at all. So just remember that, okay? All right. I'm done with my rants. I'm done with my thing. I hope I've stirred up enough feathers tonight. I'm probably not making any sense either because I've still got my cold. I'm trying to breathe. See, that was a big mistake. And thank God I got my voice back this week. I really didn't have it last week, so this is good. Anyhow, so I hope I'm making sense, you guys. I'm just, I'm ranting and raving here on IRN, Inception Radio Network. Thank God they love me and they let me rant. I just love them for it. So thanks, MJ. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Bob. I really appreciate it. I just want to let you guys know that. And so let's bring on my guest tonight. My guest tonight is Russell Brinegar. Did I say that right, Russell?
It's Brinegar.
Brinegar. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting because there's an I in there.
Yeah, it's like vinegar with a BR.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. Brinegar. Okay. Did I say it right that time?
Yep.
Okay, good. Well, Russell, thank you for being on the show tonight, and thank you for sitting through my rant there. I really appreciate it.
I love a good rant.
Yeah, every guest is having to endure them these days, it seems. It seems that Wednesday night is my rant night. I kind of do it on Mondays, but Wednesday seems to be the night that I just can't hold back anymore, By the time I get to Wednesday, I'm really upset. So, here we are. So I found you on Facebook, and I don't know much about you at all. So would you do me a big favor? Would you tell the audience what your experiences are, who you are, where you come from, how this all started for you, what's been going on? Why don't you do that? Okay.
Well, currently I'm 62 years old. I'm 2 months into my retirement and enjoying every minute of it. I have no aspirations in the UFO field for fame or glory or profiteering. I live a happy little peaceful life in Newcastle, Indiana. But I was raised in Florida, in Titusville, Florida. I grew up on the Space Coast, and I will tell you that I really miss having missiles going off just about every other day.
Oh, that's so cool. I mean, I love stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, people think I'm a big hater of NASA, but I think, whatever. At least they did something, right? I
was born on September 12th, 1955. My parents tell me that
You're a Virgo. Yay, Virgo.
I'm a Virgo. According to my parents, I cried solid for the first 6 months. So, I'm guessing that where I was just prior to this incarnation was a pretty nice place that I didn't want to leave.
I bet it was. Yeah.
But I had a great childhood growing up right 10 miles from Playland to Beach. I could see the vertical assembly building right across from the Indian River down there. And my grandparents came in from Texas during the Apollo moon rockets with their Super 8 movie cameras, and I watched all those missiles go off. And I'll tell you, that was quite a sight to see, because from 5 miles away, you could see the Saturn V sitting there on the gantry pad. And when it went off, you just worried that it was going to tip over, because it just stayed stationary for 5 to 10 seconds. And then you heard the ground rumble and windows broke. And where we were at, there was 1 million people standing on the roofs of their car selling hot dogs. I mean, it was a big thing. Cool. And but I was brought up in the scientific paradigm. I was very much interested in science fiction in my childhood in Florida. When I was 8 years old, I collected 1962 Mars Attacks cards, which I still have a collection of. I collected them back on eBay in the last few years. And but I never really, delved into the paranormal or UFOs, took the subject seriously. And this lasted pretty much until I was 54 years old. And then I had a heart attack and a near-death experience that completely changed my whole paradigm, because in the course of this incident, it was revealed to me that we are, in fact, living in a multi-dimensional existence. And if you'd like to hear that story, I'll be glad to tell you.
Oh, please do, because this is why you're on the show tonight, is because I saw that information on Facebook and I went, yeah, this is pretty cool, because I love, this is really the type of experience that most of the people who are having extra dimensional contact are having. Is it's almost like a near-death experience. So that's why I wanted people to hear about this tonight. So go ahead.
Okay, well, I was working at a local nursing home. I was a rehab manager as an occupational therapist in a rehab facility here in Newcastle, Indiana. And it was a regular day, August the 18th, 2009. It was a nice sunny day outside, and I wanted to go home and mow my grass and just get that done and then come back and finish out the afternoon. And I was feeling fine. It was a great day. I was happy. And I went home, opened up the garage. I got the lawnmower out and I pulled it on it a couple times, started it up, and about 10 feet into the first swipe, I was overcome with a feeling of extreme fatigue that I'd never felt before. And the first thing I thought of was, since it was hot outside, that I was dehydrated. So I thought, well, I better get inside. And I went inside the house. I lived in a little house all by myself at the time, and turned on the air conditioner in the bedroom and just kind of laid down. And after, 5 or 10 minutes or so, I started feeling better. And I thought, well, that was really strange. Got myself a glass of water. And I went back outside to fire the lawnmower up like a dummy, and went another 10 feet. And that same feeling of extreme fatigue came over me, only about 10 times worse. And I was just standing there, and I knew what was going on. You know, I was having a heart attack. I just knew it. And in fact, I thought I was going to die imminently. And even though I had always considered myself an agnostic, I was brought up as a fundamentalist Christian. And when I was 13 years old, I started having all kinds of questions about that my poor mother couldn't answer. Like, you know, how can you get 27 million species in a 450-foot boat 4,000 years ago? You know, things like that. So I always considered myself...
that question that we all ask as a kid, like, isn't that crazy? Right. Okay.
Yeah, you get the deer in the headlights and you move on. But I was filled with an unexpected feeling of anticipation, because even though I'd always considered myself an agnostic and kind of moved away from the Christian faith, I was very curious if, in fact, there was any type of life after death. And it just, I felt like a kid on Christmas morning. It's like, oh, good, I get to find out for sure, you know, whether this, you know, thing that you hear about, that there's life after death, is actual reality. So I started circling around in the grass like a dog trying to look for a place to do his business. I didn't want to lay on gravel to pass away. And finally found myself a nice little patch of grass. And the sun was beating down on me, and I just thought, man, this is beautiful. You know, I'm just going to be able to just sail away from here, and it'll be either an eternity of unconsciousness, or I'm going to get to find out, you know, what's beyond the veil. And just as I had that thought, it was very strange, because it was almost like I was pulled out of time. I was just standing there. There was no sound. There was no birds. The sound of traffic stopped and everything. And then the strangest thing, unexpected thing happened, and entities that I knew, that I was very familiar with, started showing up. And it was almost like I didn't see them with my eyes, but I knew they were there. And there's a few people that showed up in my presence. My mother.
Russell, I'm going to start asking you about these entities. Now, did they show themselves as people you knew, or were they alien entities, or would they be considered angels?
Well, here's the thing. It was almost like I Googled into a computer, Russ is dying, and associated links started popping up, with the most closest associated link popping up first, which was my mother, my father, my brother, me, which really freaked me out, and a strange girlfriend that I'd been separated from for about a year, because both of us had been married and divorced twice, and she wanted to get married again, and I didn't. I just couldn't go there. So we'd been separated for about a year, and lo and behold, there she was. I did not see her with my eyes. I felt her presence, and I knew it was her.
And so I got to stop you. I just got to stop you for 1 second. There is a part of your story that I hardly ever tell anybody about that happened to me. So that's why I want to go down the path of you saw yourself.
Right.
Explain that to me. How did you see yourself, and were you your best self when you saw yourself?
I was a higher version of myself, and I got the distinct feeling that this life that I'm living on Earth is only one feed that's going into this higher version of myself, that there's like multiple existences on multiple timelines that are all feeding into this. Now, eventually, after this happened, I eventually studied the simulation hypothesis, and David Chalmers has a version of the simulation hypothesis called the mind-body hypothesis, where you're providing input for your higher self, and then you're also receiving input from it at the same time. So it's like an exchange of information between your higher self and your earthly life. And the strangest thing about it was the people that were there, some of them, the first ones to show up, my most immediate family, were still living their lives on Earth. My mom's alive, my dad's alive, my brother's alive, and Julie, my estranged girlfriend, was still alive. And it was the strangest thing to realize that there they were. I don't know if I was looking at an etheric version of them or their higher self. I did not see them with my physical eyes, but I felt their presence very strongly. I mean, I knew who these people were. And then there was a few associated beings that I did not know who they were. They were familiar to me, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly who they were. So I was just stunned. I was stupefied, just standing there in the hot sun going, oh my God, there is something beyond the veil. And I really wanted to reach out through the veil and cross so that I could be with these familiar spirits to me, because they were so welcoming. But the freaky thing is that some of them were still here on Earth. And it's like, well, how can that be? And it was presented to me almost like an impression that I had a choice and I better make up my mind really quick. They were more than compatible with me crossing over at that point in time. And I was very tempted to do so, because right then and there, I could find out what this whole show is all about. But
Right.
But the newfound knowledge that we do live, we're embedded into an interdimensional existence with other frequencies all around us that are occupied, with intelligences, made me curious about what it would be like to live in the physical world a little bit longer with that knowledge. So I was just like flip-flopping in the back of my mind. I knew I had to make up my mind really quick, but I decided to stay. So
Okay.
I had to get myself to the hospital. So I went inside and I got my keys off the counter and I drove myself to the hospital instead of calling the ambulance, because I knew I wasn't going to die, because I had just been given this choice and
Exactly.
I had made it. So, I mean, it was obvious I was going to make it to the hospital. So
Right.
I pulled up to the front of the local hospital, which was about 5 miles away. And I went inside and I handed the keys to the guy that was at the information desk. And I said, I'm having a heart attack. Would you please park my car and bring my keys to me wherever they take me? And his eyes got big as saucers, and he says, I sure will, So he took off out the front door. They got me a wheelchair. They wheeled me into a little room. I've got an IV stuck into me, morphine. The doctor comes over to me and says, yes, you're having a heart attack. We don't have the facilities here to deal with this. We're going to ship you up to Ball, which is about a 40-minute drive in an ambulance. So I said, okay, cool. So they got me on the stretcher, and they're taking me out to the ambulance, and the sun hit me in the face again, and I smiled. I just looked up and I smiled. I said, oh, this is so cool. This is just so cool. So they got me in the ambulance, and there was 2 EMTs in there. One was a guy in his 50s, and there was
New York & Company is the best kept secret for great fashion at amazing prices. The new holiday collection has arrived, and this weekend is the Friends and Family sale. Every single thing 50% off. From holiday party outfits that sparkle to hundreds of spectacular gifts starting at $5. They have something for everyone, including new arrivals from their exclusive celebrity brands from Ava Mendez and Gabrielle Union. Hurry and check out the best deals of the year from New York & Company.
the other gal, she's about 35, and they were looking at my monitor with really worried looks on their face, like they were going to lose me. And I knew they weren't going to lose me. I knew everything was going to be fine because I made it my decision, and that's the way it was going to be. So I tried to humor them by telling them a story of a couple weeks previous camping where a bee stung me on the heel, trying to make them laugh because I wanted to break this seriousness of them looking at my monitor. And I heard the male EMT say under his breath, he'll think bee sting when he gets to that cath lab. And I remember thinking, I wonder what he meant by that. Well, I was soon to find out because, I always wanted an ambulance ride, with the sirens going and everything. It was really fun. And at the time, I had one of my little Captain Kirk. I was hanging on to my Captain Kirk flip open cell phones, so I'm texting various people. Like I texted my manager and said, I don't think I'm going to make it back today. I'm having a heart attack. I'll talk to you later. And but when I got rolled up to Ball Hospital, I went inside and the doctors were all there ready to go. I mean, they were scrubbed up. They had their gloves on. And they said, look, real quick, we can do one of two things. We've got blockages. We can either put stents in or we can do a quadruple bypass. What do you want to do? And it really put me on the spot, sitting there.
Yeah, that is kind of like, it's a no-choice choice, right?
I said, well, I don't really know that much about either one of them. Can you give me the rundown? So they gave me the rundown of both. And of course, I said, after listening to what you just had to say, I think I'm going to take the stents. So they wheeled me into this room, and there's a television on my left, and there's a doctor with, little glasses on and stuff, and he's looking at me. And then I realized what the EMT meant, because when they jam a big, thick needle in your femoral artery on the inside of your thigh, you feel it.
Oh, yeah.
But fortunately, they had me on some kind of medication that I knew it hurt, but I didn't care. And I was more curious about watching this whole procedure. So I actually got to watch the doctor place this little stent. And I saw the collapse part in the artery. And it's like a little pair of Chinese handcuffs, because they're feeding it through this line. And it's a little wiggly, wobbly, springy thing. And as it approached the collapse part, I'm saying, there's no way that's going to break the artery. There's no way they can do that. And all of a sudden, he twisted his wrist a little bit and boom, popped it right open. And it was successful. He said, first one went in, we got another one to do. So I watched 2 stents. But here's where it gets a little strange, because when they wheeled me out of there, after they put the 2 stents in the back of my heart, I'm walking past, and who was there but my estranged girlfriend, Julie, with mascara running down her face. They wouldn't let her in because she wasn't family.
Right.
And I started crying, and I said, I thought to myself right then and there, I'm going to fix this. This is crazy. She showed up for me in the yard. I'm going to fix this. So by and large, 2 months later, Julie and I flew to Las Vegas and got married by Dracula.
Oh, wonderful. That is so cool. I was going to say Elvis, but hey, Dracula will do.
Yeah, well, we went through online, and saw all the different things that you could do. It's a great way to go, because it's only like $450. And they have a webcam that they'll give you at the end of it. All your friends can watch on the computer. There's no RSVPs, no gifts, no nothing. It's just a cheap, easy way to get married, where all your friends that are interested can watch.
If I ever get married again, Russell, I'm going to do that. But I'm doing the Elvis wedding, because I love Elvis.
I was standing there. They had her in another room, and I saw all the smoke, coming down the stage, and then the curtains open, and this coffin comes out, and it creaks open. This guy in white face, pops out, and then they walk her in. And I'm thinking, I'm really glad I stayed alive for this, because this is a lot of fun, And,
oh, God. I got to interject something here right now. You're like talking to a breath of fresh air, because I have forgotten how lucky I am. I have almost died so many times, and I've come back, and I've seen myself also in a vision or almost death experience I had once, and I've gone through a lot of what you've been through. Not the same, but very similar. And I always come out of it going, this place is so cool. I'm really glad I'm here. The other place, though, I got to tell you, I've been there too, and it is spectacular. So right now, you're in that same place I am, except you don't know, do you? I mean, maybe you do. Maybe they showed you. But the other place you're going to, it's so full of love and so amazing that once you got there, you would never have chosen to come back. I can tell you that right now.
I totally believe that, because I was really stupefied by the whole experience. For the 6 months after this happened, I really didn't know where to go with it. And I really wasn't much of a reader in my life. I didn't read for pleasure. And Julie got me, my current wife, got me a Kindle, where it's got the text-to-speech and everything. And it was almost like training wheels, because hearing that audio component for me was the missing piece. And it trained me on how to look at the text and how to start reading. And then at some point I didn't need it. And now I've got a personal library full of UFO books that I bought on eBay, and there's hundreds of them that I've been through. And that's a pretty amazing thing in and of itself. But I delved into the literature because it was a personal search on just what in the heck happened to me. What was that about? And you read the ketamine theories and all the scientific explanations that, your oxygen's missing in your brain and DMT's released from the pineal gland, all the chemical explanations, But when you have a subjective experience like that, nobody's going to be able to talk you out of it with any, logical explanation like that. But I don't blame them. I tried with one person.
They have to try because they've never had the experience. They don't know.
Right.
I mean, it's amazing to me. Did you get any of Betty Eadie's books, by the way?
Who?
Betty Eadie.
No, I've read Eben Alexander and Kenneth Ring's Omega Project, where he compared the alien abduction experience with the near-death experience, and that book in and of itself was kind of a springboard. And then something happened in the fall of 2012. It was 3 years later. I had a friend of mine from a campground I belonged to that was a ghost hunter. And I got a call out of the clear blue sky from Carl, and he said that he was going to go to the Rhodes House up in here in Atlanta, Indiana, and asked me if I wanted to spend all night in a haunted house. And, of course, my old paradigm, I was saying, no, I'm just going to be watching paint dry. There's nothing going on there. But what came out of my mouth was, yeah, I'd love to. So I wound up doing that. And it was very interesting because I see all the local paranormal groups showing up with their EVP equipment and all that. And it really sparked an interest in that field. And it was very quick that I picked up the connection between the ghost phenomena, the poltergeist, the elementals, the jinn, UFOs. Everything's all tied into a giant meta phenomena. So I just immersed myself
Thank you for saying that. I'm feeling better already tonight because I've been saying all along. And what's crazy about this, I'm just going to do a little tangent here for you. Some of these evil people that are running the UFO community and its narrative have been saying the same thing I've been saying for years. I just didn't know it until recently. But it's this simple, Russ. It's all connected. It's all connected. Everything. The JFK assassination, everything. It's all connected. Near-death experiences, ghosts, you name it, it's all connected. So anyhow, just want to throw that out at you there. So anyhow.
But it became an obsession. David Wilcock actually said something that I had to laugh out loud because the same thing happened to me. He said when he got into this field, he couldn't look at a garbage can lid without thinking of flying saucers. And that's kind of how I was for a couple of years because it was just such a profound realization that the UFO phenomena is real. And there's an underlying core reality to that it really does change you. It changes your whole perspective, and it's like, oh. And then you realize that very strange things have happened to you all of your life that you just kind of filed in file 13 and didn't think much of. For example, in 1961, when I was 6 years old in a trailer in Florida, I got a visit by what you could only call two shadow people. And this happened when I was 6 years old. And I didn't know what to make of it. I had no way to process this experience, so it was just something that I remember to this day, and I filed away. And then a few years later, in 1966, when I was 11, I was walking...
Russell, can we go into what those shadow people kind of looked like? I mean, were they just shadows? Did they interact with you? Did you have communication with them? What happened?
I'll tell you exactly what happened. I was laying in the bed, and my mother had just kind of like tucked me in, and she went out and she shut the light out, and there was a light on in the bathroom, which she always kept on. And after she was gone and things settled and I was ready to go to sleep, these two black silhouettes just appeared in my room. And to this day, I've always wondered all my life, was this sort of like some afterglow effect, like a flash camera or something where you get an afterglow? No. These were two distinctly, just totally, I've come to know it as super black, where something from another dimension attempts to appear in this dimension, and they don't even reflect light. It's like a black hole. It's just like a black silhouette. And
that's so true. I've never heard anybody say it that well.
Yeah, there's a lot of early UFO pictures that they, at the time, wrote off as hoaxes because like half of it right down the craft was just totally black, and they thought, oh, that's hokey, but that's actually the super black phenomena, which means that part of that object does not exist in this spatial dimension, and it doesn't reflect any light. And but these, when they appeared, they walked over real slowly to me, and they bent down as if they were checking on me, stood back up, turned their heads and looked at each other, turned back, and just disappeared. Okay, and it happened in the course of a couple of minutes, and that was that. But then when I was 11 in 1966, I was walking down the driveway in Titusville, Florida, and I looked up and saw several saucer-like crafts just stationary, hovering in the air. And my reaction as an 11-year-old was to drop to my knees and cry. And the reason I was crying is that I wanted them to take me home. I remember thinking of that when I was 11 years old.
Oh,
and
boy.
Little did I know, in 1966, that was the great UFO wave. It was a global UFO wave in 1966. So that was kind of a coincidental thing there. But
I got to say something else. I used to go run track at night when I was in high school, and every night I go up to that track alone, and I would beg them to come and take me home. Beg them. I'd be on my knees practically all the time, like I knew this place was just going to be so much hell that I was like, God, get me out of here. And they never came, and I always got stuck being left here. But anyhow, I guess there's a purpose, or we wouldn't be doing this, right?
Yeah. Then the next one was in 1976, 10 years later, in ages 21, 22, and 23. I had episodes of sleep paralysis about once a week, and I just wrote it off as some anomaly that was happening to me. It was also combined with a very strange recurring dream of I'd be talking to somebody face to face, and all of a sudden their eyes got really big and they started screaming, and I was apparently turning into something non-human, and then I would wake up. So that was just kind of a strange 3 years that I had no idea what was going on. And then in 1979, I didn't find this out until the year 2012. But in 1979, I was driving with a female friend of mine, Mary, from Indianapolis to Bloomington. And I reconnected with her on Facebook after 30 years. And we started talking down memory lane. And when it came to this, she goes, "You don't recall any of this?" And I went, "No, what?" And she goes, "You don't remember the light?" And I said, "No, tell me about it." So she tells me this big story, and I'm just stupefied again, where she's telling me this, where we were driving to Bloomington and a light appeared and it kept getting bigger and bigger. And she kept telling me to go faster and faster. And I drive like an old man, but I do remember hitting the accelerator and trying to, listen to her and get away from it.
Yeah.
This is about 1 o'clock in the morning. And then next thing I know, it's bright. I'm pulling into her driveway. And I asked her, I was very fatigued. I was very, very tired. And I asked her if I could sleep on the couch. And she said, sure. And she tells me the story that while I was sleeping, she was in a dress that was muddy from head to toe from the ordeal, whatever happened. And she felt violated. And she went out and burnt that dress on a barbecue grill. And so I'm amused by this story. I'm kind of like chuckling. I was like, really? Well, apparently she had called Bud Hopkins, and he had tried to get her to get a hold of me for years, but she never could. So there's an incident that's a mystery in 1979 that I was told by, a co-experiencer of this thing, whatever it was. And I've been suggested by several people to get hypnotically regressed, but I don't really want to. I don't feel any urge to do that because there's a reason why, I don't have any memory of what went on, and I want to leave it that way. But
and I got to say something, Russell. That's a healthy attitude to have. I'm one of those people too. I don't want to know. I don't care to know. If it's all happening, that's fine. I'll know about it when I die because I've already done that and I know what happens there. And you get to see everything. You get to experience everything in a giant explosion of love while you're doing it. So I don't care. I just don't care. People go, "Why don't you care? You should care." And I go, like, why? It doesn't make any difference now, and it's not going to make any difference if I know about it. It's not going to change who I am or make me a better person, or, it's not going to really do anything. If, though, it does answer the question of who are the evil guys behind this, the curtain, well, maybe I should get it done. But I don't know. Apparently, I don't have that feeling, or I would do the regression. Because if there's something there I needed to know, I would know that. And same for you, probably. If there was something there you really needed to expose or do, you would get the regression. I think that's why a lot of people do get regression, is because they know there's something there they need to tell others about to warn them. I really believe that.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I don't really feel any need to is I feel like they know what they're doing. And Jacques Vallée was one of the authors that I really discovered first off. And of course, Jacques Vallée believes that the man behind the curtain is, who is unknown, is some sort of control mechanism for human consciousness. And I just figured that I was in good hands and they did what they needed to do. But if you would have asked me up until the time I was 54 in 2009 when I had my heart attack that I was going to write a book about UFOs, I would have laughed at you. But, I immersed myself in the material. I thoroughly read John Keel. There's wonderful audio books.
Amazing guy, huh?
On entire collections. Andrew Colvin put together entire collections of John Keel's early magazine writings from Mail and Saga and Playboy.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
One of them is Flying Saucer to the Center of Your Mind. The other one is The Outer Limits of the Twilight Zone, The Precipicious Percipient, Searching for the String. I mean, there's all these wonderful collections of his writings. And I really related to Operation Trojan Horse, and The Eighth Tower was one of my favorite books, where he thinks there's an alien device that was left behind on Earth that, is responsible for a lot of the paranormal activity. And in England, it was a cult book, but over in the United States, he kind of got stones thrown at him because everybody in the United States...
I haven't even heard of it, to be honest with you. And I thought I knew most of his titles. Not that I've read them all, but I knew most of them.
Oh, so Disneyland of the Gods. The Eighth Tower is like my favorite, and it's one of his most obscure books.
Ones. Yeah,
it was one of the more obscure ones, but it was his favorite, his personal favorite. But it wasn't a big seller or anything. And I found out that most of the really good material that really says good things never made it to the New York Times bestseller list. In fact, they may have just sold a handful, and they went into the right hands. And it changed those people's lives, and they told people, and it's the way the thing works.
Right.
And you were talking about this festival, the UFO conference that we just had, Paola Harris. I was there, and it was funny because the first day I got there, I saw Grant Cameron at McDonald's, and I got all excited inside, because he was like one of my favorite guys. I didn't, but my wife had dinner with him. I was sick for one day. I missed a couple of the lectures on Saturday. I was in the hotel room.
We all got that typhoid Mary, whatever it was that went through. Somebody brought it.
Julie sat at one of the circular tables and had a nice conversation with him. But that was the big news of the conference, that after 40 years of being a nuts and bolts guy, studying what the various presidents knew and everything like that, he has converted to this paradigm. The underlying nature of the UFO phenomena has to do with the evolution of consciousness.
Right.
And one of the things that I noticed, which led me to writing my book, Overlords of the Singularity, The Manipulation of Humankind by Hidden UFO Intelligences and the Quest for Transcendence, is the fact that Jacques Vallée, John Keel, Ivan T. Sanderson, Harold Wilkins, Curtis Peebles, all of the old authors, Jim Lorenzen, Apro, they all came to very, very similar conclusions, that they didn't know what the UFO phenomena was really about. They couldn't quite wrap their mind around it, but it had something to do with technology. And in one of the chapters of my book, I do a synopsis of the top 40 UFO authors that I was exposed myself to, and their conclusions after an entire lifetime. And the thing is, most of these authors wrote prior to 1996, when Ray Kurzweil came out with his book, The Singularity is Near. They didn't really have the concept of the singularity, and nobody was talking about it. All they knew was the UFOs and technology were connected in some fashion or another. Okay, so it was just kind of a bingo moment for me. They're talking about the singularity. They're talking about some sort of future stage in our technological evolution where we develop the ability to interface technology with consciousness and slide out of this reality and travel throughout the universe. Right. So that was sort of the conclusion that I came to, a tentative conclusion.
And I'm going to throw one more piece into the puzzle. At that moment in time, we were actually traveling to these realities and changing what you and I mean, like you and I being on this radio show tonight can change a lot of people's lives. And it knows that in the singularity in the future, that is actually the now.
Right.
Am I making any sense to anybody, right? But
Right.
you get what I'm saying. I mean, everything you and I are doing right now is because of what happens in the future with that singularity, because that is our higher selves, that is our aliens, that is everything that we create in our consciousness as these other dimensional beings. And who knows, maybe we're creating all of these guys coming in here. Maybe we create the portals through different dimensional time space, you know?
Well, one of the abduction experiences that I studied was Betty Andreasen, and there was one haunting thing that she reports she was told that stuck with me ever since, is that she was told that human beings are the larval form of the Greys, and that stuck with me. And then you get into the Italian friendship group, you know, that started in 1956 and went through the late 60s.
God, I forgot all about them. They're great.
Well, the Ackridge, or the friendship group, spoke of a group of biological robots that worship technology that were from Orion.
And you know, I think that's where the Matrix came out of, was that just that statement right there, because and the Terminator, you know, the whole bit about the machines have taken over. Okay, anyhow, go ahead.
Well, that's a whole other rabbit hole of how Hollywood is previewing things that are actually real and plausible deniability, where, you know, if people see it in a movie, they don't think it's real, but they actually told you something that is real. You know, there's a lot of that going on. Even Steven Spielberg's E.T., the extraterrestrial, if you look at these little bodies that they just unearthed in Nazca, Peru, the smaller of the two looks just like E.T. on the movie. Really? They had the same, that was one of the things I really enjoyed at this conference, was Jaime Maussan and his presentation. I don't know if you caught it. Where
I didn't catch a single presentation. I was so busy yakking with everybody. I didn't have a chance. And I was sick, too, so I was trying to sleep a little bit. But, we were doing the wheeling and dealing in the, you know, as usual. We were all trying to get interviews and talk to people and try to figure out what's really going on. I mean,
that was my first UFO conference. And I had been looking forward to it.
Oh, good for you.
I've been looking forward to it forever. And I met Sergeant Clifford Stone. I met George Norrie, Jaime Maussan, lots of people that were very fascinating to just Don Schmidt. And
Don, I'll tell you something. Don Schmidt is an unsung hero to me. I think that guy has more integrity than most of the guys in the field. He did some really amazing research on Roswell, but when that whole Jaime Maussan thing happened with the alien in the case, you know, from the 40s, supposedly, he went on board with Jaime with that, and it turned out to be a falsehood. Okay, so instead of trying to say, hey, I'm right, you know, he basically said Jaime jumped the gun and that he made a mistake, you know, and he actually admitted to it. And to me, that is the best thing anybody in ufology can do, because the problem we've got is so many of these guys are ego so wrapped up in what's going on that they won't admit when they've made a mistake, you know. And Don he was the first one to ever admit he really blew it, and he apologized to the UFO community. And you know, I have so much respect for him now that I didn't have before. It's amazing.
Well, I would have embarrassed myself if I asked him what was really on my mind. I wanted to say, how do you look so perfect all the time? I mean, it's like every hair is in place, you know. He's got a suit with no wrinkles in it. It's like, how do you do that? You know, so I'm really glad that I didn't ask him that question, because he probably just would have looked at me funny.
He's probably an alien. You know, that's probably...
He's a cyborg.
What's going on? Oh, shoot. And, you know, we'll be the last to know, of course. Well, hey, Russell, I hate to do this to you, but we got to take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll do another hour. But I'm just trying to actually get a break in here for once. And I want to tell everybody before we hit the break, though, that I am relaunching my website starting probably right before Christmas or January 1st. I'm not sure which date yet, but I need your help, you guys. And I would never say this if it wasn't true. I cannot continue being on radio the way I am unless I start getting a little tiny bit of money coming in to help me out. So I'm starting a membership website that's going to start paying for all of the expenses for being on the internet and all that stuff that comes with it. And I don't need much a month, but I'm hoping that you guys can afford $3 a month to hear what I've got to say. And at that point, I'm also going to be letting you guys in on things that never have been out there before. I'm going to have special interviews that'll be on there that you'll be getting as a member of my website. So I'll tell you more about it later. So for right now, let's hit our break, MJ, and we'll take you out. We'll be back here on Inception Radio Network, which is also being replayed over at Mike Barra's Late Night in the Midlands. We thank them for that. Okay, be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to the California MUFON Radio Show. I'm your host, Lorien Fenton. We're here on Inception Radio Network, the home of the most amazing app on the planet. I hope you guys have it. And I do hope that you guys are in the chat room, which I'm not. I've got to get over there and see if anybody's there. You guys, you know, I miss not having people in my chat room. Ever since we got the new website, things have been a little quiet in there. And it's okay, but I still miss all you guys. I do hope that a lot of you will show up in the chat room. I'm clicking on it right now. Let's see if anybody's in there. And the reason why is because I really love to have you guys' input the last half hour of the show. I like to have questions from the chat. If there's a lot of people in there, then the more questions come, and our guests get all kinds of intelligent questions, because I'm not always one to be doing so. So I really love it when you guys are there, especially, and I got to say this, Mr. Durhuff. I miss Durhuff, and I don't know where he is. So we got to find the Huff. That's all there is to it. And I also want to say to you guys that it's this coming Saturday on December 2nd, is our annual MUFON UFO conference. A conference. What am I saying? I'm so tired, and my cold is so bad that I'm taking all this NyQuil. So I'm a little spacey, guys. So here's the deal. This Saturday is our annual MUFON Christmas party, and it's we call it the UFO Holiday Party and the Green Alien Gift Exchange Potluck. So that's what we're having. So if you're in Northern California and you want to have a great day and have a lot of fun and meet a lot of cool people, all you got to do is go to MUFONMarinSonoma.com. That's MUFON. Think of Marin County. Think of Sonoma County. So it's MUFONMarinSonoma.com, and check out the Christmas party coming up this Saturday. And we're going to have a blast. It's just going to be a lot of fun. We've got a lady who is a contactee that's had a couple of regressions done that's going to talk to you about her contact. That'll be interesting. And then we have a guy coming in that's going to talk about Snakehead Point, which is another interesting place here in Northern California where we believe that they're having all kinds of contact, but nobody knows about it. So that'll be fun. And then we, of course, will have the Green Alien Gift Exchange, a ton of food. You never know who might show up to do a sky watch. I have friends with goggles that show up, and we just have a blast. And I can't ever, it's so funny. We start about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm kicking people out at 11 or 12, and they still want to go to Denny's after they've eaten all this food. They still want to go to Denny's and talk about UFOs. So sometimes it ends at 3 in the morning. So we're literally there I'm there from 3 to 3. So a lot of times. But yeah, it's our best party of the year. A lot of cool information, a lot of fun people show up. So I do hope you guys can. And please make a night of it. Don't try to drive.
New York & Company is the best kept secret for great fashion at amazing prices. The new holiday collection has arrived, and this weekend is the Friends and Family sale. Every single thing 50% off. From holiday party outfits that sparkle to hundreds of spectacular gifts starting at $5. They have something for everyone, including new arrivals from their exclusive celebrity brands from Eva Mendes and Gabrielle Union. Hurry and check out the best deals of the year from New York & Company.
Home. I just tell people, if you've got a little money saved up, there is a Motel 6 up the street. There is a Best Western right down the corner. I mean, it doesn't cost that much if two of you get a room together and just, have a great time. And that way you don't have to try to drive home that day. We have lots of great places for breakfast the next morning. So, yeah, just have a good old, just make it a Saturday night into Sunday afternoon event. So there you go. Anyhow, I do hope you guys can make it. Go to MUFONMarinSonoma.com. And it's right there under the next meeting. So you'll find it. All right. So, and also, don't forget, if your MUFON people aren't doing what I do for my MUFON people here in Northern California, you guys get on your state directors and you say, why can't you guys be like Lorien? Okay. I want you to say that. I want Jan Harrison to start getting phone calls that say, Lorien said that we got to have meetings every month, we got to have speakers, and we got to have a big party every Christmas, okay? And a big Skywatch in July for 4th of July. We have an annual Skywatch that is so much fun. And we can go camping, and actually, this year we stayed at an Indian casino, and I gambled all night. It was so much fun. Anyhow, the point is, I try to make it so that every month is a party, and every July and December, we have something really fun to look forward to do. And I think everybody who has these meetings should be doing it too. So anyhow, that's my opinion. And I just want you guys to start rattling MUFON's cage a little bit. It's good for them to get rattled. As Jan says, I'm one of the biggest rattlers they've got. So I want you guys to invoke my name and rattle their cages and get them to have meetings everywhere all over the United States every month and have, a lot of people show up and have a lot of cool information there. And who knows, maybe the Florida people could have our guest tonight speak at their event every month. So that'd be cool. So anyhow, you guys get the drift. You know what I'm trying to say. Be with like mind, be with like people, and share your experiences and have a good time doing so. Because trust me, folks, these are your real family. They're your real spiritual family, or you wouldn't be finding them. It's that easy. It's that simple. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, MUFON, MUFON.com. Yeah, I keep wanting to say .org, but it's .com. So check it out, MUFON.com. Check out my MUFON website, MUFONMarinSonoma.com. All right, Russell, we're back. Done my advertising deeds for the night.
Good.
Great. Okay, so when we last left off, we were talking about basically consciousness in your book. And the title of your book was The Singularity, and we got into the point where I decided that, it's somewhere in the future maybe that we're all going to end up doing what we're doing now. I know that sounds kind of backwards, but that's my opinion. What do you think about what the singularity will bring for us?
Well, it may sound a little strange, but I am a believer in a lot of what Nikola Tesla said that he was attempting to do. And one of the things he did was build a spirit radio. And he tried to communicate electronically with people who were incarnate. And I believe that's one of the technologies that will come about as a result of the singularity coming, which is predicted to occur somewhere between 2045 and 2080, according to Kurzweil and some of the other futurists. And I do think that the veil will come down, and the people who are in physical bodies will be able to communicate freely with people who are not in physical bodies in some sort of an electronic consciousness interface. And there's things that are going to come down the pike here that are so fantastic that they're almost laughable if you talk about them, because we're just moving into nanotechnology, and then down from that is picotechnology, and then femtotechnology, which is actually a technical definition of the physical universe, because Ed Fredkin, one of the early AI experts, always thought that this physical universe was a computational mechanism that somebody was using to solve a problem. He had some speculations on what the problems were, but we don't really know. And by definition, femtotechnology is a computing device that uses subatomic particles to make calculations. And if you get into any of Michio Kaku's stuff, like parallel worlds or hyperspace or future of the mind, he goes into a lot of detail about why this universe cannot possibly be a random accident unless there's the multiverse theory is real and we just happen to be in a random universe that got everything right. But he had 6 specific parameters that he went into: epsilon, omega, lambda, N, D, and Q. We can go into what those are if you like in the future.
Yeah, please do. I'd love to hear that. So, yeah.
Okay.
Uh-oh, he's getting out the materials, guys. Look out. You're actually going to get an education now. I love it.
I can even find it.
Yeah, because, he's a very interesting guy, but I have a really hard time listening to him. I'd rather listen to you. Explain it. And I got a picture taken with a poster of him the other day at the Palo Harris conference, which was kind of fun. Okay, he's still looking things up.
All right,
he'll get
there.
It is. Okay, there it is.
The first parameter that Michio talks about is a figure called epsilon, and this represents the relative amount of hydrogen that converts to helium via the fusion process. Because if epsilon was originally set at the Big Bang just a fraction less than what it was, the nuclear binding force would have been too weak for protons and neutrons to bind, and none of the heavier elements that are necessary for life would have formed. If epsilon was just a little bit higher, no hydrogen would have survived the Big Bang and no stars would have formed. N represents the strength of the electric force divided by the strength of gravity. If gravity was set a bit weaker, then no atomic fusion would have ever taken place. Matter would have just been slung out into outer space. If gravity was set just a bit stronger, nuclear fuel would have burned up too quickly. So galaxies would have formed rapidly and stars would have collided. Omega is the relative density of the universe. If the relative density was slightly smaller, the new universe would have expanded and cooled too fast. If omega had been any larger, the universe would have prematurely collapsed before life even had a chance to begin. Then lambda represents the cosmological constant that determined the acceleration of the universe expansion. If lambda had been set just a little bit weaker, just a tiny, tiny decimal point weaker, the universe would have already collapsed. If lambda had been set just a fraction stronger, the universe would have already blown apart. And then Q represents the amplitude of the irregularities of the cosmic microwave background. If Q was too small, the universe would have remained a lifeless, homogeneous mass of gas and dust. If Q was too large, all matter in the universe would have already condensed into black holes. And then D represents the actual number of spatial dimensions that the universe is composed of. And if any one of these factors was altered at the Big Bang by as little as 1 part in 1,000,000 billion, we would not be having this conversation right now. No life would exist in the universe, and the cosmos would be a chaotic mass of nothing. So any one of those factors that he mentions would be the odds of getting it correct and holding steady for billions of years is astronomically impossible. But the idea of getting all 6 of these parameters exactly correct, it goes beyond the realm of feasibility that this is a random universe. So one of 2 things is going on.
Yeah, go ahead, because I know where you're going, but go ahead, because this is the cool part.
I mean, there's only 2 possibilities. This is an intentionally fabricated work of femtotechnology using subatomic particles to make calculations to solve an unknown problem that we probably can't even wrap our mind around. Or we live in a true random multiverse, and we just happen to be lucky enough to be in the one that accidentally got it right. One of those 2 situations is true.
That's true. And which one would you bet on?
I think it's an intentional simulation. We don't know who the creators are. There's a lot of religions on this planet. Depending on who you talk to would determine who they would attribute the creation to. There's a new group of hypothetical aliens called the hyperversals. I don't know if you ever heard of those or not, but
no, I have. No, explain this to me, because now I'm going to start laughing. They don't look like super chickens or anything, do they? Or
Michio Kaku theorizes a little bit of them in The Physics of the Impossible, or one of his books, where he speculates. He's a smart guy, and he speculates that in a previous realm, I don't know if you want to call it a universe or just a previous realm, after eons of time, and this realm was dying, the pinnacle of intelligence that evolved in that universe tried to save themselves by creating a new universe and embedding themselves in it somehow. And you've got to figure out, so this is a hypothetical group of creator aliens that they refer to as hyperversals. And we don't really know, the identity. We can only speculate and theorize about it. But we can go so far as to scientifically prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this is a intentional computer-like fabrication that we're embedded into, but we can't really identify unless you just fall upon your personal beliefs, of the identity or ultimate purposes of who they are and why they're doing what they're doing.
Right. Well, okay, now I'm going to just throw something in here. What if we're like a simulation and we are actually running the Sims?
That's a possibility. To get back to our original greatness that we had in the previous universe. It may very well be that the only way that we could survive is to come into the universe from the microscopic level up, go through the whole process of evolution, achieve technological singularity, merge our consciousness with technology, and transcend.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, and that becomes a torrent of information that continually replicates itself.
The nice thing about it is it's so wide open. I mean, if you'd have gone back in Roman times and talked to a Roman soldier and tried to explain to him what flying saucers are, or what the funny lights in the sky that they all see.
Sure.
He wouldn't have had any frame of reference or concept. And we may be not too much farther along than the Roman soldier, because right now, a lot of people are seeing, the orbs, the lights in the sky, the plasma phenomena as spacecraft from other planets. Okay, that's our paradigm.
That's not what I believe, and a lot of people have been in the UFO field for a very long time.
Right.
We all know. I mean, and this goes back to Jacques Vallée. This goes back to everybody in the beginning. We all know they're interdimensional.
Right.
We're not sure. There may be a species or two that gets here from another place, but if they are, they're transversing wormholes to get here. Because there's no freaking way anybody's building a solid mass ship and going through all the radiation that's out there and all the different things you got to bypass, unless their ship is made out of an organic type of metal that can grow to deflect whatever it is that it encounters and change itself to morph into its own shielding.
You know what the beauty of that is?
Yeah.
Is the skeptics are right. You can't get here from there in the way that they're thinking.
That's right.
If you go through ordinary space-time, I don't care if you travel the speed of light or whatever, going to another galaxy that's 100 million light years away is not feasible at all.
Nope.
You've got to find a way to slide out of this frequency band into a higher realm where everything becomes non-local, and you can go anywhere in the physical universe you want. There's probably even a mathematical formula associated with every time and every place. The coordinates get hooked in, you materialize in that realm, and then the people on that planet look up and, see funny lights in the sky.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. Now, you brought up something very interesting just now. Were you always this smart, Russell, or is this something that you feel has happened to you because of your experiences?
I feel it's definitely, whatever it is that I am right now is a direct byproduct of what happened in 2009 with my near-death experience. Because like I said, I never even was interested in reading books. I was a goofball. I was just a regular bozo on the bus. I didn't have a clue as to any of this. And all of this has come about since 2009. And I just can't help but think that the immersion into the material and the assimilation of, some of the little pieces of the puzzle, the bigger parts, the layers of the onion that are shedding, and the people that I'm meeting, the conversations I'm having, it's just like a magic kaleidoscope that's unfolding before my eyes, and I'm just constantly amazed at it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. I had the same thing happen in 2009. I almost died, and my whole life changed. Now, I had been very psychic my entire life and very much into all the paranormal and everything, very open to it for my entire existence. But when I got really sick and almost died, it was like something took a hold of me and started directing my life. Do you feel that happened to you as well? Do you feel like you've tapped into maybe a God particle that kind of like is saying, okay, yeah, this is all a bowl of cherries here, but you now have a purpose?
Yes. There's such a drastic change of personality. And John Keel goes into a lot of detail about this whole cosmic illumination thing. It happened to him when he was 17 years old. I was really surprised that he came out and said that.
That's right. God, I forgot all about that. I keep thinking of... the guy who wrote Blade Runner, because he's my favorite, Philip K. Dick, and he had an experience too that I'm sure you know about.
Right, Firebright.
Yeah. Yep.
He had the little orb that come through into the room and flitted around like a moth and landed on his forehead and made changes inside his psyche. Yeah.
Yeah, and, I mean, it's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, this is an ongoing operation that's happening every day to millions of people, and we're being worked with. Okay, tinkered with, worked with, something, where we're morphing and changing on a daily basis according to this phenomena. Whatever intelligence is behind it is pretty magnificent. And like I said before, they know what they're doing. They know human beings very well and how to, take them where they want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now, does your book address the evil that's going on this planet? Because I'll tell you what happened to me.
Yes, it does.
When I got sick, before I got sick, though, I was a hippy-dippy, everybody loves everybody, and the world is all kumbaya. Yep. And I was very open to the psychic stuff. I read, Philip K. Dick. I was into UFOs and aliens, and, I was into everything, right? Ghosts, you name it. But I always thought we created our own hell and there was no evil, that people created it, okay? But when I got sick and came out of it, it rocked my world on that one, because it really proved to me that there is evil outside of humans that's manipulating this planet and us. Yep. And I flipped out. I really did flip out. That was probably my biggest awakening in my entire life, was to the fact that there is evil out there.
Well, personally, I think that's one of the reasons why a decision was made to keep a lid on a lot of this, because the scope of it is so great and so potentially astounding and frightening at the same time that they just didn't think that the general public could handle it. And all you have to do is look into some of the cases, like one in particular in Brazil at a dam of a case of human mutilation where they were actually tissue harvested, exactly like the bovine tissue harvesting was, starting in about 1965 and going for about 15 years strong. And somebody out there needs tons of blood, because these cows are found disensanguinated.
Yep.
Blood
I know.
Missing. Blood gone. And the same thing with the occasional cases of human mutilations. Nobody really knows. And what that struck me was, the first time I heard about that, I was watching a video by Linda Moulton Howe, An Alien Harvest, and she went into all these cattle mutilations. And then the more you get into it, it just hits you. It's like, this is being done by creatures from outer space. This is not a human endeavor. And then it switched into these human cases, and I felt like the blood in my face just went right down straight to my feet. And I went, oh, no. And it's like, yes, there is a side of ufology that's extremely frightening, and you wonder, could a human being actually do that to another person? The vital reactions show that this guy was alive when this happened. He got his rear end cored out, his insides pulled out, little cookie cutter holes in his armpits. that is, to me, when I look at that, that is artificial intelligence without any feelings whatsoever for
it has
human
to be,
beings.
or
It
could be another species that's caught in this matrix along with us, that's doing this, that doesn't have any emotional, capability. And that's what makes humans very unique. My angels have told me this. They've said humans are so unique. You guys they say you have no idea how amazing you are, because there's apparently so many other species out there that don't even have feelings. They don't have art. They don't have love. They just don't have, we're one step away from God in reality. I'm starting to believe that more and more each day. Because if there is a God or an AI system or whatever that runs this place, they have to have all that, because the place I went to was so full of love. There was nothing else there was no evil that could get into it. It was so full of love. And I realized in that moment that we are so close to that. We are gods too. We are our higher selves. We're all of that. We're just, we're amazing creatures. And my angels wouldn't lie to me about that. Right. I mean, if I was a slug and I didn't have any feelings, I think they just probably helped me along. They wouldn't have told me this, but they told me that for a reason. It must be because I need to tell you guys and whoever was out there listening to the show tonight, because it's super important that we understand that we are, have you been watching People from Earth?
Yes, I love that show.
I love that show. I laugh so hard because
I love the little gray alien.
Oh my God! Everybody loves him. He is like the favorite. He is the runaway character of the show. I swear to God.
Oh, he steals the show. Yeah. Is it my imagination, or is he modeled after Dr. Evil with Austin Powers? Because he's got the gray suit and he just acts like he's trying to run the world from the spaceship. That's a great show.
It is a great show, but I love that one thing they do. They tell each one of the contactees, you're special, right? And that is the one thing that all the contactees, that when they get lost in the fact that they are special, that we always, I laugh. I always go, blame the aliens for making you think you're special,
Well, I think to understand, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because we're not. We're just like everybody, all the contactees are just like everybody else, but there is this whole side that the UFO community likes to perpetuate. And I don't know if you've run across it yet. You may not have. It's just that a lot of the contactees really do think they are special and they're better than everybody else because of their contact. And it's a little freaky and a little weird, but it does happen. So, I don't know if you've met people like that or not, but it's out there.
One of the really cool things about John Keel's writings is he reveals some things that happened amongst his circle of silent contactees. He always kept certain pieces of information away from his books, because that way he was able to ascertain who was a legitimate contactee, which he called a silent contactee, because for every single contactee that talks about their experience, there's 1,000 that don't want anything to do with talking to anybody about it.
Tell me about it. Those are the ones, like I know 3 people right now that can call a ship in. It'll be in their front yard. We can all go out and have popcorn and talk to the aliens if we wanted to, but they won't talk to anybody and they won't tell anybody they can do it. And they, I barely can get it out of them. Right.
Well, what he discovered through his circle of contacts, and he reveals this in the Mothman Prophecies, one of the books that he wrote, is what the intelligences that come through the contactees like to do, for some reason or another, is give them a series of little small wins, little prophecies that come true, and it builds their confidence, and then all of a sudden they get the message of this big whopper, like on such and such a date, 1,000 flying saucers are going to land, and they are so confident with it because of their small successes that they announce it to their flock or they announce it to the world, and then when it doesn't come through, it devastates them. And this has happened over and over and over, and nobody really knows why. But you were talking about the evil side of the thing, and it's like you'd have to familiarize yourself with the concept of a von Neumann probe, a self-replicating von Neumann probe, because
I have no idea what that is. This is the first time I've heard of a self-replicating von Neumann probe.
Okay, well, there was a physicist named John von Neumann that was popular back in the 50s, and he came up with the concept of a self-replicating von Neumann probe and went so far as to say the predominant form of life in the universe that we would probably contact would be these self-replicating automated von Neumann probes. And personally, just tentatively, in my little speculation circle in my own little head, I think long ago, based on everything that I've read, something similar to that arrived here and attached itself to one of the vibrational planes of Earth. And they have an interest in us achieving this technological singularity for their own purposes. And this was confirmed in a book that I just read by spirit medium Paul Hamden called The Zeta Primer. And one of the things that these Zeta say is that there are ET races out there that want to own the human astral plane. Go figure that. You know, so there's aspects to this thing that are so far out there that when you say it, you know, people want to chuckle and go, what? You know, and it's like there's a lot going on that's just beyond our comprehension. And this is one of the reasons I feel that what we really need with this technology that's going to be invented between now and 2045, we're going into an exponential technological expansion year to year. We're no longer in Moore's law where technology just doubles every year. We're going into an exponential expansion. You know, and all of a sudden it's over everybody's head. There's not a single person on this planet right now that understands all the technology that we have. We've got, you know, this robot in Saudi Arabia that's earned its citizenship and Bitcoin and blockchain and all this cryptocurrency going on. And, you know, there's things in the artificial intelligence arena that is just a little bit scary and mind-blowing right now. That nobody understands all of the ramifications of it. It's compartmentalized where this person might know that and this person might know that, but nobody really comprehends the whole picture. But there's an intelligence out there, the intelligence behind the UFO phenomena, that does know all about it.
Oh, you bet. And one of the things that I've been able to discover through the contactees and through psychics that I know is that if we could possibly get our brains to start working both sides at the same time, we'd have a much better concept of what's going on around us. We might lose some of our humanity in the process, but as far as I can tell, I think that whatever this singularity is, or this AI, or who's ever running the show here, I think they're moving us in that direction, because most of the people I know that have had near-death experiences like yourself, or contact like my friends, or whatever it is that we go through, one of the things they all say to me, and you're going to probably say it too, is, yeah, I think I'm using more of my brain power together, both sides, at the same time than I ever did before, because I feel much calmer in my life. I don't feel like there is such emotional input. And one of the things they've discovered, and I'm going to throw this out to folks, and they can all laugh at me if they want, but they've discovered that our endocrine system seems to be the biggest player when it comes to how the aliens control us. Because one of the things they can and cannot do is turn off our ability to reproduce, or are wanting to reproduce. And in doing so, the endocrine system plays a huge part in it, because it's all chemicals that make people want to make babies. It has nothing to do with making them to be here on this planet, you know, like, oh, I've got to have a kid because it's so important that I put another one on this planet. If you thought about having a kid logically, nobody would have one. Okay. I mean, it's that simple. Exactly. You know, so it's all chemicals. And what people don't get is if both sides of your brain are firing at the same time and you're not separated by logic and function, then they can't just go into the function side and say, oh, let's tweak up those chemicals so this woman wants to have a baby so badly she can't stand it, right? And then she'll go, you know, have sex and make a kid, you know, no matter what. And people have no idea how they're controlled by other dimensional time space when it comes to us becoming the fulfilled, enlightened person we're supposed to become. You know, priests don't not have sex for a reason. It has all to do with how they're training their body and mind to think as one unit, not just one side. And you'll find that most men that are testosterone driven are very one-sided thinkers. They are not your typical, computer nerds, okay? And your IQ goes down with one-sided thinking too. And it's a very interesting concept. I'm really starting just to dive into it, but what do you think about that? Do you think that they tweaked with your brains at all when you were in this other dimensional space? Because you talked about your frequency being, heightened or played with or whatever. I know mine has, but I also know that they've done a little more than just mess with frequency. I think they truly have done something to my brain structure in a way that I don't understand.
Yeah, who really knows, what they're actually capable of doing with the human psyche and the DNA and the genetics and whatever. There's a couple of points in history that you can look to that's almost certain that we've had our genetics manipulated. One of them was 2 million years ago when, prior to Homo erectus, there was these little 4-foot-tall Australopithecines running around with a brain the size of an orange. And then all of a sudden, overnight, they've got a 900 to 1,200 cubic centimeter brain, and they're about 6 foot tall. Well, for 1.5 million years, it seems
New York & Company is the best kept secret for great fashion at amazing prices. The new holiday collection has arrived, and this weekend is the Friends and Family sale. Every single thing 50% off. From holiday party outfits that sparkle to hundreds of spectacular gifts starting at $5. They have something for everyone, including new arrivals from their exclusive celebrity brands from Eva Mendes and Gabrielle Union. Hurry and check out the best deals of the year from New York & Company.
That this population of Homo erectus walked the earth pretty peacefully, and they just had one piece of technology, which was a bifaced axe that they would throw into herds of animals, and that's what they did. And they went from camp to camp. And then about 200,000 to 300,000 years ago, it appears that the telomeres on chromosome number 2 were expertly fused, and the overlap between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens was expertly deleted. And this had to be an intentional move. Now,
so you know what telomeres and where this happened in the DNA structure?
Well, it's just, stuff that I've read. Arthur David Horn was a biological evolution instructor at the Colorado University for 14 years, and he quit right before his retirement because in all good conscience, he just couldn't continue to teach what he felt was a lie, which was just pure Darwinistic evolution. And he went on to write a book called Humanity's Extraterrestrial Origins and goes into great detail about the telomeres.
Read this. Oh, God, I can't wait to get my hands on it. Okay, tell me a little more. This is very interesting.
Dr. Arthur David Horn. Now, you were talking about before, the what we would perceive as evil. I've done a lot of exploration into how human culture has been thousands of years ago, and in particular the writings of Titus Livy. He was a Roman historian, and there's 5 20-hour volumes of it on Audible that I've listened to, and it's horrifying. I mean, there's battles that they had, just like you see in Game of Thrones, where, one group, comes to the other group and just blood and guts and people pooping themselves and everything. Well, there was this one battle that Titus Livy talked about where 800 men, they counted when it was all said and done, had dug a little hole and stuck their head in it and suffocated themselves. And then you think about human torture devices, the bronze bull, where you get inside this bronze bull and they light a fire under it and your skin melts off, and they take pleasure when you reach a point of pain where you go moo, and they're laughing at you. There's something wrong. There's something wrong with human beings and the psyche, and it has to do with the expediting of technology. Because what happens when you're a warring population is that each side has to get better technology than the other one for survival reasons. You got to make a better sword. You got to make a better furnace, better catapult, think of something to kill the enemy. And this expedites the production of technology. So what I gleaned from reading Steven Brescio's book about the friendship group in Italy, where over 100 people had contacts with these humanoid aliens, they gave us some information about this side of the coin with the biological race of biological robots that worship technology. I think that group, the CTRs or the Weros, as they're called, to be built is what it means, came likely from Orion. and as a self-replicating von Neumann probe, and in a very unfeeling way, they programmed the human race for war and conflict. And the friendship group has empathy for us, but they have like this non-interference policy that they go by. And even their spaceships, which have been validated in optical labs as being real devices about 30 foot in diameter. I mean, right. the footage of these craft has been authenticated scientifically. Yes. But they were invested with something called Ureta, which was very similar to Eliezer Yudkowsky's Coherent Extrapolated Volition, or CEV. And what that is, it's almost like a chess playing program that can look several hundred moves into the future and select the move that's going to take them to checkmate the quickest. And what Ureta does is analyze situations, and they only make decisions that are in the eventual best interest of all parties concerned. Or they're sinless, in other words. The occupants and the craft are in a sinless frame of mind where they have this foresight to look into the future and make decisions based on the eventual welfare of all parties concerned, to the point where the ship will self-destruct rather than harm anybody. Okay, so they were the ones that warned us about the Weros, this race of biological robots that was an experiment that went wrong long ago, that has come here and tampered with our genes and created this warlike psyche so that we compete with one another to the death and expedite this technology, because there's something on the technological singularity that they want. In the meanwhile, the friendship group and all the humanoid aliens that are on our side, so to speak, they're kind of playing in the background because they have this non-interference thing. They may have been the ones that showed up at all our nuclear facilities and shut down the capability of the Minuteman rockets, like Robert Salas at Maelstrom.
Right.
At the same time, there was a facility in Soviet Union that the same thing was happening there. They're trying not to allow us to destroy ourselves with nuclear weapons. They showed up here and there, back in the 50s as humanoid aliens talking about non-proliferation, and we got to get rid of our nuclear weapons. They're very much background figures, but they warned us of this group that does not have our best interest in mind, and are going to use this technological singularity for a huge self-replication event of some sort, where they merge at least like a portion of human consciousness with their technology and make it part of themselves, part of their hive mind somehow. So there's a lot of really wild things that are going to become apparent in the next 20 or 30 years. So I'm hoping that, I can stay alive in this physical body long enough to see some of these things. But I've told myself that the next time my physical body is about to break down, I'm going to let it go, because I remember back in 2009 when I had that decision, I've sometimes occasionally wondered if I made the right decision, and I'm still curious what would have happened if I'd have caved in and passed away on that day. So I don't think I'm going to go through a whole lot of, major surgery or anything to keep myself alive indefinitely, because I'm so curious about, the nature of the higher frequency bands that I really want to get up there. And like you said, I've read Eben Alexander's book and all the lovely things that so many people have said that have actually died. And the really cool thing about the age that we're living in is that it's no longer scientifically unfeasible. Things like reincarnation and the afterlife, these are being studied at major universities now. There's a fellow Facebook friends with, Renario Hernandez, who teamed up with the late astronaut Edgar Mitchell and formed the FREE organization. And they've got a very impressive list of PhD level, doctorate level scientists that are studying the UFO phenomena and its relationship to human consciousness right now. And that's major, because for the last few decades, the scientific community, all they did was just cross their arms and chuckle.
Right.
Ever since the Condon Committee, come out with their bogus results, the people in the scientific community didn't feel like they were credible scientists unless they read it all off.
I'm not sure that the Condon Committee wasn't right. Maybe we can't handle the truth. Where like you were just saying, we're a weird species in the fact that we kill each other, and because we do that, we're now in an age where killing each other is just stupid,
Right.
but is it going to stop? No, I don't see it stopping. And the reason why I don't see it stopping is because only so many people are being given this higher frequency or whatever the heck has happened to us. So we understand there's no reason to kill anybody. But
Right.
the other beings on this planet, I don't consider them human in a weird way. I consider them barbarians.
Right.
Barbarians. They just don't have the same spark that we've been given as contactees, as near-death experiencers, as people that are psychic or people that are awake or whatever you want to call it. There's something that happens once you realize there's evil on this planet. Everything changes. The playing field becomes very different.
Well, lots of people have accepted this as a fatalistic sort of thing. It's like we've always been predators. It'll always be that way. Whoever has the most powerful weapons is supposed to survive, and everybody else is supposed to be dead.
Right.
And, and I don't think any further about it than that. Yeah, it's horrifying. And it's like, I'm finding myself distancing myself from that entire mindset, or even the desire to interact with it or justify, a different way of looking at things. It's like, I want to be with my own people,
Well, exactly. And that's why I do this radio show, Russell. I tell people, they think I'm just kind of nutty. I sit here every week saying, get to a MUFON meeting because, and like I tell people, MUFON's a great organization, but it's not really about MUFON for me at this point. It's about the fact that MUFON offers you a place to go to meet other people like yourself. I think that's the most important thing out there, right?
Yeah, this event that just happened in Laughlin, Nevada. We went to the Hoover Dam, by the way, and I got to tell you about this. We passed the sign.
Yeah, tell me about it. I want to hear.
13 miles away from the Hoover Dam, and I looked at Julie, she looked at me, and we said, let's go. It was the most fantastic afternoon I had ever had, and you know what the weirdest part about it was? No. Right there by the Hoover Dam, built in the 1930s, is a giant celestial calendar in granite that talks about the great year. 25,920-year procession of the equinox. It was coming through the little speakers that were mounted on the granite wall. And there's these tall bronze angelic statues up there that people go up and they rub their foot for good luck. But they had a whole celestial calendar about, the great year. And it's like, I've been hearing a lot about this on, wisdom teachings with David Wilcock and, the Hamlet's Mill, and how this is embedded in all the cultures where there's some sort of solar flash or ascension type event, every 25,920 years it comes around. So I was just stunned. I just stood there in the sun listening to this coming through the speakers, talking about the procession of the equinox at the Hoover Dam on the ground in granite. It was wonderful.
That is so cool. Yeah, I've heard these angels. Aren't they about 50 or 60 feet tall? Am I wrong?
Oh, yeah, they're huge. It's very impressive. And it's like you go down through all these little crags, and it's like overhanging mountains or almost like engulfing your car. I mean, it was so beautiful. Tears came to our eyes. And we went up into this little parking lot, and they got elevators where you go down. You can look at the Hoover Dam, and it's breathtaking. I mean, I had a friend of mine who lives in Phoenix that said, well, if you're out that way, you need to go see the Hoover Dam. That's worth seeing. And I'm thinking, Hoover Dam, man, who wants to see that? But it was really something, and just the whole history that's outlined there in their tours and stuff, that it's just fantastic. Cool. And that this whole celestial calendar was there was just kind of like par for the course for the weekend that we were having, heading to a UFO convention. But it was really nice. Just all of a sudden you're in a room, and there's Sergeant Clifford Stone that used to work for Project Moondust, and Jaime Maussan that's looking at these bodies in Peru, and Grant Cameron, who just changed his paradigm to the consciousness movement. And it was really cool. I really had a great time.
Now, what was your take on Clifford Stone? What did you think of Clifford?
Well, I kind of felt a little tinge of pity, because when George Norrie was interviewing him, he says, okay, now no slight to you, but how many in this audience don't believe a word of this? And about 6 or 7 people went, nay, and I assumed everybody else, was on board. And the whole flying saucer crash retrieval thing is mired in ambiguity and hearsay and things that are really difficult to get to the bottom of. Leonard Stringfield spent 30 years of his life trying to get to the bottom of it. And he's got 5 status reports that I've read. And there, within these status reports, there's incidents that he'll talk about, like a doctor that he ran into that actually did an autopsy on a little guy that had lizard-like skin and stuff. And he was convinced that there is an underlying core of truth. But then you got, like, my favorite UFO writer, John Keel, that just flat out does not believe in crash flying saucers and pickled aliens. And then you've got other people like renegade military historian Douglas Dietrich, who says that these were all Japanese POWs. John Keel thinks that Mac Brazel found a Fugo balloon, from Japan. Mm-hmm. And none of us were there. So the only thing that we're really relying upon is hearsay and testimonies from people that say that they were there, that they do have direct knowledge of this. And everybody just has to come to their own. Clifford Stone is a wonderful person, and I'm fascinated by his stories of crash retrievals and alien encounters and stuff. And I just accept it as a possibility. And I do know one thing about Sergeant Clifford Stone is he is diligent since he was released from the service about researching documents. It's like he very much wants to ascertain his story. And I'm thinking, nobody goes to that length of going through millions of documents and everything in this desperate search to find out their own history, and their own verification of the things that they're telling people, and people are telling him he's full of crap. And it'd be frustrating. I mean, if these things really happened to Sergeant Clifford Stone and he's telling the world it's almost like Philip Corso, when he wrote the book The Day After Roswell, he got bitter at the end and just said, you know what, the public doesn't deserve to know. And I can I can relate to what he was thinking,
Exactly. I was just going to say, I can relate too. I was just sitting here today thinking, I just want to give it all up and just crawl back under a rock again and just get a normal job. And, I have days where I just go, God, it's so futile, but it really does, once you're in, I don't think there's any way out. And the interesting part about Clifford Stone, I just want to say, is that he's had major telepathic communication with aliens. And I think it absolutely has got him to the point where he is thinking like you and I are just talking about. He doesn't really want to talk about it anymore. He just wants to get through the next day because, he's been there and done that. And, when you sit and you help, he actually helped an alien escape. Right. Or get back home. So, he's done his yeoman's duty, right?
And you can tell that he's very empathetic, and every time he tells certain portions of the story, he breaks down emotionally, and you can't fabricate that. So it's PTSD from dealing with so many people that were so hard on him for what he was doing at the time. You got to understand, he was dealing with people that wanted results, didn't want him to show emotion with the ET, and then when he let that thing escape, that was that. Then they were really, they still used him, but at that point, they can't trust him anymore, right? He's letting ETs go home. Right.
So,
there's one thing for sure. If you listen to the testimony of Bill Cooper and Robert Dean and all these people that were in the military, there are documents that they present to high-level officers that go into great detail about humanoid aliens. And whether they're true or not is up to each researcher to determine for themselves. But the fact that the documents exist and that they're being shown to officers and told that they're true is factual.
Yeah. Oh, that is absolutely true. And that's what Clifford told me. He said, I said, were they the Greys or whatever? He goes, no, it looked like a human being with big eyes and, bigger eyes than normal, smaller mouth, smaller, nose type of thing. And I said, really? He goes, yeah, they're definitely, they could pass off as a human that there's something wrong with them, but they're still human,
Well, it's got to be really frustrating if something really beyond the norm has happened to you in your life and you're telling people the truth about it and they're just not able to accept it as something real. I mean, that would just get old and get very frustrating after a while. I was surprised to hear from Clifford Stone that he said this convention might be his last public appearance. I know he just had major heart surgery, I think last March. I talked to him, and when I was in the process of writing Overlords of the Singularity, I gave him a copy, by the way, because I talk about Clifford Stone quite a bit, and I figured if I talked about him, that he deserves a copy. So I sent one home to Roswell with him. I don't know if he'll read it or not, but I'm really curious if he does. And but yeah, I talked to him on the telephone for about 3 hours, and he's a wonderful person, and he's very he always ends his Facebook post with "God bless." I mean, he's just really an empathetic, kind person, and I just can't see somebody like that, fabricating this big lie, and telling everybody, because he certainly hasn't profited from it.
Nobody's profited from it.
Right, that's
funny.
To
tell you, if people, when you said at the beginning of the show, I don't do this for the money. Well, that's true, folks, because I can tell you right now, I've run every kind of book company you can run, and I'm telling you, there is no money in books anymore, and it's sad. It's really sad.
People aren't reading anymore.
Yeah.
I guess they're looking online. And one thing that I've noticed is if I recommend a book to somebody, they'll get on Google real quick and get the debunker, get the skinny on it, and make up their mind if they're going to read the book or not, just based on a little blurb that they read on Google. And you know as well as I do that you can get on Google and put any word in the English language on there, and the word debunked or hoax will be right after it. I mean, you can find anybody debunking anything,
Yeah.
So,
well, that's nobody wants to believe. It's that simple until it actually smacks you upside the head. I just don't think that many people are going to believe anything.
Well, that's the beauty of this whole thing, is it's like the wild, wild west of information. And one person that I wish was still around was James Mosley. He used to have a magazine called Saucer Smear that had all the latest gossip, about all the ufologists and everything. And I've got a couple of copies of that I got on eBay, and they're hilarious. And people have lost their sense of humor. I mean, Sean David Morton, saw him on a YouTube video where he was kind of emceeing a convention where Richard Dolan and Douglas Dietrich and a couple of people were there that kind of clashed with each other. And he expertly just lightened it all up and told a joke, And I think that's sort of needed in the UFO field, is a sense of humor to come back into it. Because, we're all just trying to figure this thing out. We know that there's a core of reality to it. Earth is like a cargo cult. Some of us have seen things that don't belong there or that weren't made here. We know it to be a fact. And then you've got the shamans who claim to be in touch with the airplane pilot. And you've got this whole host of characters, the hucksters, the profiteers that play on people's gullibility and make up stuff. And then you've got the real deal. And it's the real deal that all of us want to weed through the hall of mirrors and find. It's there.
New York & Company is the best kept secret for great fashion at amazing prices. The new holiday collection has arrived, and this weekend is the Friends and Family sale. Every single thing 50% off. From holiday party outfits that sparkle to hundreds of spectacular gifts starting at $5. They have something for everyone, including new arrivals from their exclusive celebrity brands from Ava Mendez and Gabrielle Union. Hurry and check out the best deals of the year from New York & Company.